may already be familiar with the two main styles of mosaic crochet, overlay and inset. But did you know that there's a third style using a spike stitch? Hi, I'm Susan Lohman, the Crochet Architect. I'm here today to teach you another style of mosaic crochet using a spike single crochet, which will make your mosaic crochet project reversible. So let's get started. I've prepared a swatch using the spike single crochet mosaic crochet technique, and I'd like to point out a few things on it. Each row is worked with one color, and I'm using a dark and a light, two contrasting colors. And each one of these rows is worked on the right side of the piece. The beauty of using a spike single crochet is that this project is reversible because this stitch shows up on the front side and the back side. Another thing I like about the spike single crochet is there's less yarn used for the spike single crochet than there is for a double crochet if you're doing the overlay mosaic crochet technique. So let's take a look at how we do that. And first we'll take a look at the chart. I prepared this chart as a free download on my website, so if you would like to learn this technique, you can download this for free and follow along with me in the video. Now you'll see that there are row numbers here on the side. This is a right-handed chart, but if you're left-handed, you can also start from this side. Each row has main color or contrasting color next to it, and that signifies what color you're using throughout the whole row, no matter what stitches you're using. Every square represents one stitch, and there are 17 stitches in this first row. There's a 4-stitch repeat, so if you want to make it wider or narrower, you can add or subtract multiples of 4 stitches. And there's a 4-row repeat as well. Now the squares without a letter are back loop single crochets in the row color. So whether it's a light square or a dark square, you're going to be doing a back loop single crochet in the color that you use for that whole row. And of course, row 1 is just single crochets using the main color. But once you get into the other rows, you'll have light and dark squares with no letters in them. And that is always back loop single crochets with that row color that you're using. Now, these squares with an S in them are where the spike single crochets are. And those are specific to the color of the squares. The dark squares are the main color. The light squares are the contrasting color. The squares with a B in them, which you'll see on the first and the last stitch in each row, starting at row 2, those are single crochet in both loops. You've got your dark color for your main dark squares are a main color, and your contrasting colors are the lighter squares. So working those first and last stitches in both loops makes the edges a little bit stronger on your project. So let's get started with row 1, and I'll go ahead and put my magnet right here on my magnet board, which I always love to use for charts. And we'll go ahead and we'll chain 18 and work 17 single crochets across. So I have already chained my 18, and I'm going to start my first single crochet in the second chain from the hook. I can insert my hook in the back bump on the back of the chain, which is right here, or I can insert my hook under the back loop and the back bump, which is my preferred way of working the first row because it's easier to get my hook in. So that's the second chain from the hook, and I will single crochet in each of the remaining chains across until I get to the end, and I will meet you at the end of row 1. Okay, I have finished row 1. I've got my 17 single crochet, and I'm going to demonstrate using my comb technique, so there will not be ends or tails at the beginning and end of every row. So what I do in this is I take my loop after my last stitch of the row, and I elongate my loop. Then I take my skein of yarn and pass it through the loop from the back to the front and tighten that loop. So this secures the working yarn and that loop will not come undone. Then I take it and I carry it across to the beginning of the row where I can use it 2 rows from now, again, when I'll be needing this color again. So let's take a look at our chart and see what we do on row 2. So we're always following our chart to see what to work in each row. So row 2 is done with our contrasting color, which is our light color. We're going to start with a single crochet in both loops and end with a single crochet in both loops. And each of the other single crochets across will be in the back loop. Doesn't matter if they're dark or light squares, they're in the row color, which is our contrasting color. So let's work that row together. We've got our light color here, and we need to attach it. So what I like to do at the beginning of the row is insert my hook under both loops, front and back loops, and have my carried yarn across in the front of the hook, and take my new yarn, leaving a good length tail, and pull it through. And then I chain 1. That's going to keep that yarn in place that I'm carrying across, and I can work my first stitch. So that's just attaching the yarn. We need to work our first single crochet in both loops of our first stitch, and I'm working over the carried yarn. That's getting encased in my stitches on the front and the back. That yarn is in between. So then I'm going to work my back loop single crochet in each of the other stitches across to the last stitch. I'll go ahead and do that across the row, and you can do that with me, and I will meet you at the end of this row. Okay, I've worked all my stitches across to my last stitch, and I'm going to work that in both loops. And then I'm going to do my comb technique. So I'll make my loop nice and big, grab my skein of yarn, pull it through, and tighten up that loop and that stitch. We don't want this last stitch to be too big or too small. And then that loop is secure. Now, before we start our third row, we're going to tug a little bit on the carried yarn that we had at the end of row 1. And then we're going to tug a little bit on the width of our row, because we don't want this yarn to be too loose or too tight. So we can carry this new yarn across, and we can use our main color on row 3, but we need to find out what stitches we're going to work on row 3. So let's look at our chart again. Move our magnet up, and we're going to use our main color. On row 3, we're going to start out with our single crochet in both loops. Then we'll go into a spike single crochet and a back loop single crochet. Then we'll have a 4-stitch repeat of a spike single crochet and 3 back loop single crochets. And we'll do that 3 times across the row. Then we'll have a spike single crochet and a both loops single crochet. So let's do these first 3 stitches, both loops, spike single crochet, and back loop single crochet. So just like we did to start row 2, we're going to take our main color, and we're going to insert our hook under both loops of that first stitch, and we're going to actually pull up that color, which was left over here for us to use again. And we're going to chain one, and that encases our carried yarn. Then we can do our first single crochet in both loops to keep a nice firm edge on our project. Then our next stitch is the spike single crochet. So the difference in a regular single crochet and a spike single crochet is a spike single crochet does not get worked in the row that we're working into. It gets worked into a previous row. So we're going to do our spike single crochet one row down from this row, which is considered 2 rows down because our first row is the first row and this is the second row. So we're going to insert our hook from front to back in that same spot where we worked our single crochet, and we're going to pull the yarn from back to front just like we were working a single crochet, but we don't want it short like this. We want to pull this loop up to the height of our current row, and then we can yarn over and pull through 2. And you can see that the spike single crochet is much longer than the regular single crochet. Now our third stitch is a back loop single crochet. So that's the same way we've been working them. Then we're going to do our 4 stitches that are going to be repeated across the row, and that's a spike single crochet. So this is our next stitch, and that's 1 row below that. Insert our hook from front to back, grab that yarn and pull it up to the height of our working row. Now this is something, the height of this loop is something that you need to practice with to get the height that you like that works best with your gauge. And sometimes those strands twist around a little bit, but that's okay. So that's our spike single crochet, and then we have 3 back loop single crochets. So 1 in the next stitch, 1 in the following stitch, and 1 in the stitch after that. So this is what I will repeat across the row, and if you're working with me on your swatch, you can do your spike single crochet and 3 back loop, spike single crochet and 3 back loop, and then we'll do our last 2 stitches together. Okay, I'm down to the end of the row and I have my last 2 stitches, and those 2 stitches are another spike single crochet and a single crochet in both loops. And that's the end of row 3. And before I do my comb technique, I'd like to show you these spike single crochets are visible on the front and on the back. So that's what makes it reversible. They come around the stitches instead of laying in front of them. So that's a nice reversible stitch to use. And we'll finish off row 3 by using the comb technique and making our big loop and passing our skein of yarn through it. Sometimes it's just a little ball of yarn, but I have big skeins right now for this project. If you like this spike single crochet mosaic crochet technique, I have a new pattern available on my website called Hearts in Love Mosaic Scarf. As you can see, this is a reversible scarf because of using the spike single crochets. So no matter what side is facing out, the hearts are visible. Another nice thing is this is a nice thick fabric that it makes, so it will keep your neck very warm in the wintertime. And it's a great project to make for Valentine's Day. Okay, so remember what we do before we start the next row. We tug on our tail here and we pull our row across a little bit to get the right amount of yarn inside there so there's not too much or too little. And we can start row 4. But we've got to look at our chart again. Okay, row 4 with our contrasting color. We're going to start with a single crochet in both loops, do a single crochet in the back loop, and a spike single crochet. Then our 4-stitch repeat is a back loop single crochet 3 times and a spike single crochet. So let's go ahead and do these first 3. We have our carried yarn in front, our new working yarn behind it, and we're going to insert our hook under both loops of that first stitch, pull up a loop of our carried yarn, previously carried yarn, and we're going to chain 1. This is the color that we're using on this row. Remember, we're always going back and forth with light and dark across our rows. We do one row with the dark and the next row with the light. So you never do 2 rows at a time in this specific mosaic crochet technique. So after our chain 1, we need to still work that single crochet in the first stitch. If you don't do that, you won't have the top 2 loops to work your first stitch into on the next row. And I know that because I've forgotten to do that a few times. So our next stitch on this row is a single crochet in the back loop, and the top of our spike stitches still have front and back loops. And then our next stitch is another spike single crochet. So we're going to, instead of inserting our hook here, we're going to insert it the row below. So we're working our light color stitches into our light color row for the spike stitches. I'm going to pull up a nice big loop and finish our stitch. And then if you remember on the chart, our next 4 stitches are 3 back loop single crochets. There's 1, 2, and 3, and then another spike single crochet. So not in this next stitch, but the one below it, we will work our spike single crochet. Make sure that that loop is up nice and tall so that it is about the same height as the row that we're working in. And that's what we will repeat across this row 2 more times, and I'll meet you at this end for the last few stitches. Okay, I'm at the end of the row and I have my last 2 stitches, and those are a back loop single crochet and a single crochet in both loops of the last stitch. Go ahead and pass our skein of yarn through this loop, making sure that we don't have our other color in the way. I've done that a few times too. The other color gets in the way. I have to go back and change it so that it's not caught in this loop with this one. Okay, so at the end of this row, we're going to tug on our carried yarn, and we're going to stretch the width of our piece a little bit so this isn't too tight or too loose. And as you can see, we've got our spike single crochets in our main color, the dark color, and in our contrasting color. These are all right side rows, and on the wrong side you can see we also have the spike single crochets on the wrong side, so that's what makes it reversible. So that's all I'm going to demonstrate for you on this swatch. You can work each of the other rows by yourself. If you want more practice on this, just follow the chart all the way across and work your single crochets in both loops, your spike single crochets, and your single crochets in the back loop according to what's on the chart. I hope you followed along and you've successfully learned the spike single crochet mosaic crochet technique. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comments section below. And if you have any success stories, I'd love to hear those as well. If you'd like to make a project using this spike single crochet mosaic crochet technique, please check out my Hearts in Love mosaic scarf pattern available on my website. It's reversible, just like the spike single crochet. If you've enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and please subscribe to my channel for more crochet videos. Happy spike single crochet mosaic crocheting to all of you.